Hello and welcome back to Planet Product Owner. This is your host, Scott. Welcome to the journey, my friends. Good to have you back. Good to be back. I hope I can start getting back on again another regular cadence, and I'm sure you're tired of me saying that, so I won't say it anymore. What we do on this podcast is really we take kind of a real-world approach and really focus on the art of being a product owner. Now, we have spanned across different roles in the agile delivery model. We have spanned across different roles and expectations and just some tips and tricks for Scrum Masters, for product owners, for dev team, and even for organizational leaders. Now, today's episode is going to be pretty challenging, but it's going to be pretty fun as well. I've had some emails sent to me, Scott at planetproductowner.org, asking me to really level with you about adopting frameworks, different kinds of frameworks and things like that. There have been some other specific questions relating to that I'd like to kind of cover today too. But I want you to remember there's plenty of material out there for you to go out and review and look at. You can get certified on some of these things. And again, most folks use the SAFe framework, that methodology. That's great. So what I want to do is point out to you some things today. If your organization has rolled out or adopted some super duper large framework that's supposed to make you agile. First, I would say congratulations in this effort. And that's great. There's a few positives with that, obviously, and there's some snags too that you're going to run across along the way. So what I would like to do is start with a few assumptions. First, it seems that if your organization has been willing to adopt a framework like this, it seems that they're first committed to becoming more lean. That's a good thing, right? Cost is always a factor, and realizing the cost save and eliminating or reducing waste and defects and stuff like that. That's a big motivator for an organization, I would see. The second assumption that I would make is that, and this is probably an and/or, right? The second assumption, and it seems that your organization is committed to changing some things around, doing things a little bit differently, maybe even try some things that are new, that are a little bit different. Perhaps this indicates to you that they're willing to take a little bit of risk, right, in trying new ways to get old things done just a little bit better than the way we do them today. That kind of points us to innovation and creativity, which is really part of the agile spirit as well. Third, and finally, I think one of the other items up for bid, so to speak, we're going to talk about today, it seems they're looking forward to some organic growth. And I'll talk about organic growth here in just a little bit and later in one of the segments here. But what we're talking about is we hear things like cross-functional teams, self-organizing teams, things like that. Those are good buzzwords, right, for your management team or your leadership team. And you think in terms of organic growth there, and maybe that's part of the reason why you'd make that decision. So if I were leading an agile transformation, these are probably the main goals that I would hope to achieve by implementing some type of transformation or large-scale framework. Now, what I want to do is look at these in the following segments and talk about the importance and maybe the why. Y'all knew I was going to say the why, right? Behind each of these three goals. We're also going to talk a little bit about I guess to give you some insight on the audience today. And I say that kind of lightly because you guys know that no matter your role in whatever part you're playing in your larger organization, I've had a lot of feedback. No matter your role, you're getting some good information and some good tips from this, and at least some good talking points and insights to cover. So today is really going to do kind of a deep dive into the art, maybe into some of the psychology behind why we do what we do, and some of the things that we run into. So before we get to that, I just hope everybody is happy, healthy, and safe right now, given the current situation around the globe. And so with that said, let's journey to Planet Product Owner. So I think the first assumption that I'm going to make here, and the first topic really that I want to talk to about adopting these frameworks and the why behind it, is the commitment to become more lean. Let's face it, when we are in a large organization, oftentimes we have a lot of waste. And so assimilating into a lean culture, or using buzzwords like we're going to do agile, that's an attempt to recognize the idea that we need to work a little bit better, right? The driver behind this factor should be to reduce cost involved with rework, refactoring, and all that comes with the lost testing time that you normally find in a typical traditional or waterfall type effort. Because you guys have been there. We normally lose time somewhere towards the end of the project when we're doing the testing, and it's hard to get acceptance and it's hard to get UAT done because maybe what we've done is no longer valid or whatever. So when you're doing a test driven or a test first or a test approach as you're working through this, we tend to reduce a lot of rework and we tend to have better quality code, right? We all know that. So keep in mind, though, that not all the efforts or the initiatives or what we may even call projects or features or whatever, not all of those automatically qualify as an agile effort. Sometimes it's just not the best practice to use. Now, if the company is investing the money, the manpower, and the motivation to adopt such framework, however, my assumption is that they have done their homework in advance and they've realized the need is big enough that it's there, right? There's a big enough need to promote this philosophy throughout the organization. Or have they done that homework? I don't know. Let's talk about it. So see, sometimes there are certain pockets or areas in a large organization particularly that work underneath that framework. So you can find some areas that are more mature than others within the large organization. That's kind of what I see a lot. So my hope is that you are finding that your projects, your efforts, whatever you want to call them, that they're actually cutting out a lot of waste in time, money, and resource allocation, and that other folks are kind of getting on that journey with you and they're getting up to speed. But what if the waste is not really reduced? What if the quality is not really improved? What if the culture doesn't support the framework? That's where we run into some issues adopting the mindsets. And yes, it's often something that can't just be corrected by anything other than a top-down approach. But I think there are some ways that we could assemble a ground game to help move the needle as a product owner, scrum master, or team member. I think the single biggest benefit that the team has to reduce waste is in that area of testing and rework. We've talked about that before, I think in an earlier episode, but I want to emphasize it again here. Many times we just tend to get stuck in our routines and we don't accentuate or capitalize, whatever the word you want to use, on the right focus. There are, and I'm going to say this again, you got to focus, you got to put the right focus on this, product owner. There are two primary things that the product owner certainly can focus on to help promote the framework for the organization, because the organization needs help. They made the decision, they signed you up, they put you through the classes, and they got you certified and all that stuff. But the organization needs help. How do you get that promoted? The first one is your test first approach. You test your work as you build, and maybe even before you build, with some kind of domain language oriented, test driven approach, UAT approach, acceptance criteria approach, whatever it is, right? But you're doing a test first approach, and we all know the benefit of that because we do reduce a lot of defects, we do reduce a lot of waste, and a lot of refactoring, right? The second is continually inspecting and adapting your work. Remember, if we're working in this philosophy, it's pretty safe to assume that we're working a lot in the unknown, right? So if that's the case, it's imperative that you show your work early and often and then respond to the changes needed. You remember we talked about plan, do, check, and act. I know y'all remember that. But those are the kinds of things I think that from a product owner or scrum master or team standpoint that you can definitely focus on to help promote the framework, because that helps your delivery. That helps you become cleaner and leaner, right? So if we're adding that kind of value, we're meeting the goal of becoming more lean. We just might not be doing it on a large scale. But the thing is once you start doing it, and once your team or the next team from you starts doing that kind of thing, and you start focusing on the test first approach and the continual inspect and adapt, which is why, again, I've shared with you guys the importance of getting that weekly stakeholder or share care time put together, so you can make sure you're on the right track. But the more you start doing that and the more people start sharing in that community, then you're becoming closer and closer to becoming more lean, which was the goal. right? That was kind of the goal that we set out for to begin with, to try to achieve with adopting this framework. So reporting that can be kind of tricky. But I'm sure this probably gives you, enough to know as you start the journey to supporting this new framework or the existing framework. Now, we've talked to the product owners and the Scrum Masters a little bit in this, so just remember to keep that main focus, right? Now, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk to organizational leader or manager and try to give you a few insights, because I want to help you understand from a team perspective. So if you're an organizational leader or you're a manager, and those two aren't the same, I want to try to help you understand some of the common flaws with the journey of becoming lean by looking into a few roadblocks that you could help remove in your role, right? But first, let's talk about it from the perspective of the manager, so I totally don't lose the product owner and Scrum Master and team audience here first, right? Let's look at it from their point of view, okay? Because I think it's important for us as product owners and Scrum Masters and team members, it's important for us to understand the perspective of the folks who are managing us. And a lot of times we are not managers, right? We get that. But a lot of times we have team members who do have managers that are directly or indirectly involved, however that works. So it's important for us to understand their perspective. So the managers or the leaders, they want you to produce, right? They hired you to deliver value. They hired you to do your job. If they see that you're not doing your job, then they have some explaining to do, right? They got some explaining to do to their boss. Simply put, their performance is reflected in your performance to a large degree. So when they don't start realizing the value or the delivery that they are expecting, here's what kind of sets in, right? The commitment to become lean doesn't take flight because command and control begins to creep into the day-to-day operation. And I know you've seen this. Some of you are living through this daily. The manager starts pushing work to you rather than allowing you to pull work in. Well, what kind of anti-pattern are we talking about now? So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, right? You don't want them to creep up into your stuff, but they want to give you some flexibility and be lenient with you. But if nobody's delivering, then that's kind of a catch-22, right? So I guess what I'm saying here, it's a balance. And just like I've coached product owners, that they're continually on that balance beam between business and technology, this is a balance. So the balance between the manager or the leader and the team is to recognize that there's a deep desire for results and accountability. But you got to also let the team learn, okay? And y'all know I don't say fail. I say learn, because you already know that the word fail is not in my vocabulary, even though I do say it from time to time. But anyway, managers, let me get back to them. They want folks who work on their own. They want folks who are accountable for the outcome and the quality code. But the team has been working under the impression that they learn and adapt as a team, right? So you see kind of the balance there that you got to stay on, right? Now, organizational leader or manager, or whoever you are listening today, you have to give them the opportunity to fail. You have to or to learn, right? And that's the kind of the way we got to read into it. I find it intriguing that if the method is allowed to prosper and the right expectations are set first, the framework and the spirit of agile or lean development is really a self-fulfilling prophecy, because there's built-in ownership. It's all empirical, right? The reason for that, the quality is already baked in, it's built in, and we talked about that a minute ago. So if you're the organizational leader, the mindset that you once had of being the manager has to kind of change into that of an enabler or an empowerer, if that's a word. And if it's not, you heard it here first. An empowerer, not an emperor. It's a different spelling. So special note, to the team leader or the manager here, if you push too much, you know what you're going to do? You're going to break the trust, which is really, that's what the entire team concept is based on, is trust. So if you deter trust, right, to be given or be given by the team to you, back to you, or had between the teams, right, whichever way you want to look at it, then you're killing the philosophy. You're messing with Sasquatch, man. You got to quit messing with Sasquatch. I mean, Here's the why, right? Here's why. The team members are usually not managers. I said that a minute ago, and that's been my main experience, right? They're expecting your expectations to be the same. Hear me close. If you're the leader here, if you're the manager, they are expecting your expectations to be the same as what is in the book. Meaning self-organized teams, decentralized decision-making, learning about the unknown, and empirically inspecting and adapting to learn how to work better. That's the kind of mindset that has to be encouraged and expected. Well, they're not going to get that if your actions don't speak that way, right? So we've got to continually remind ourselves that we're on that balance beam. Now, one of the common flaws that I see when organizations look to make the break to doing agile, and whatever, I mean, that's just an aside, right? I mean, doing agile, let me plug this in for you. There's no such thing as doing agile or going agile. It's either agile or it ain't, okay? You are or you're not. And that's a journey. I mean, and that's kind of a free nugget for you. But when you make the break to adopt this mindset, framework, philosophy, whatever you want to refer to it as, you have already made up your mind that it will be faster, because we're trimming the fat. That's part of the lean thing, right? We want to be lean. We want to reduce waste. We want to trim the fat. We want to test, we want to get stuff out the door as fast as we possibly can with high quality. Well, you've already made that decision in your mind by reading the materials. You have assumed that going in. And a lot of times, that's a false assumption. We have commitments that are within a time box. We're testing as we're coding. We're showing our work as we go. And in many cases, that really just doesn't imply that you're going to deliver faster. It means you're going to learn faster. It doesn't mean you're going to deliver faster, okay? In fact, sometimes it takes longer than you originally scoped because of the learning curve and many other factors that come along with it. Because it's a stack of dynamics. It's not just one thing. You don't just adopt the framework, flip a switch, and now you're delivering faster with more quality. There's a lot of factors. One of these factors is the psychology and culture of the teams and the top-down approach in the organization, right? Teams learn when introduced to the framework that what makes it successful is the fundamentals like decentralized decision-making, like more accountability by partners, because these frameworks basically outline the roles. They provide general guidance on the responsibility of each role. So it's kind of a method of to each his own, right? Meaning that if you're a product owner, you set priority. If you're a scrum master, you help remove obstacles and ensure meetings are facilitated. And if you're on the dev team, you got commitments that you're going to hit in order to call something done to obtain that sprint goal, right? I mean, that's really it in a nutshell, right? But you read into that, since the organization is committed to it, everybody checks the box in the agreement to the proposal, and then they move on as business as usual. Well, it's not a business as usual here. Because the drawback is that folks don't change the behavior and expect some, folks don't change their behavior. They expect some organic miracle to take place, right? And oftentimes that turns into folks not willing to give the philosophy the credit when something goes right. And then on the same note, attempting to enforce it with improper motives. So what in the world did you just say? All right, let me kind of see if this helps. An example of what I'm trying to tell you, organizational leader or manager or product owner for that matter at this point. Example of that is when we want to change behaviors that benefit our own status or our own outcomes or agendas, we're okay with contradicting what is by the book. That seems to be okay because after all, we're the manager or the leader. So when the team decides to do something that makes us a little uncomfortable, it's going to conflict that, right? Or it's not in the current process or policy, or it may be a little politically risky. You throw down the manager card and you have them refrain from that path, right? Even if it's something that the team felt would make them more productive, it got vetoed. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have the latitude to strike down something totally stupid. Don't get me wrong. You should do that because you're still responsible for it. But then when it makes sense, right, to you to cite something from the book that benefits you, then you're able to tweak the meaning, put your own connotation, so to speak, on it. And so you're kind of constructing your own definition out of that book. Well, that sends a bad signal to the team. It sends an inconsistent message. So if we cite the principles in the book, but when the team comes up with something cool, might impact my manager status, it's often dismissed because it's different, it's foreign, and it's weird, and it's strange, and it's out of line. So they're not really open to the change. Well, that's an anti-pattern a lot, right? An opposite of the concept of decentralized decision-making. Solving for that is really difficult, but it's not impossible. It takes the right expectations to be set, and it takes behavioral changes from everybody involved to becoming more open to innovation and admitting that there are people out there who can do things on their own, maybe even a little better than the way we do them now, with little supervision, if we give them the chance to learn, right? Take that risk. So again, this may be new to you as an organizational leader or a manager listening in. And I really felt very passionate about giving you kind of the perspective from the team, right? The main takeaway, and really what I want you to understand, is that there are way more thinking patterns and way more art involved in this methodology than there is science. So just consider that to kind of be basic training for you. Now, this was a rather long segment, I know. In the next segment, I want to dive into the second reason or the second purpose that I had outlined at the start of this episode. Organizations accepted some risk in doing something new. So hang tight. So I pointed out that the organization is probably open to taking a risk to commit to a new way of doing business. Let's dive into that a little bit, shall we? I've always taught folks that, and I'm going to kind of take a different little approach to diving into this point I want to make. So hang tight, hang with me here. I've always taught folks that a deviation in behavior is a result of a change. And if you can pinpoint the time of that change, then you can probably get really close to identifying your root cause. That makes sense. When something is working the way that it should, then it doesn't work. There was some kind of change. I think you all get that. Now let's look at this through the lens of, you guessed it, the why behind taking this risk. Why take the risk in changing what you had? Think about it for a minute. You're in a new framework. It's been adopted. Right? The company spent all of this money trying to put you through certifications and training and all of this, and we've spun up this big center of influence or center of excellence or whatever we call it. I mean, most folks agree that if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So why would we do that? Well, the challenge for you is to understand why the change or transformation was adopted in the first place. Why? Why was it initiated? Because if you understand that, then you can get a better comfort level on what kind of your overall goals are in adopting this framework. Let me ask you, was it just because it was a good talking point in a board meeting or a manager meeting? Or because it was cool, it was cutting edge, and it was flashy, because we got to get ping pong tables and open seating and all that stuff? Was it because we had antiquated processes that weren't working? Or was it because maybe that it appeared that the organization had an epidemic of silos, which were so abundant that there was zero transparency in what was taking place? And there was maybe a lack of accountability in getting those things completed on time and on budget. Well, that's what I hope you're finding, before you started the journey to commit to this transformation. It's not about chairs and open seating and bean bags and ping pong tables. That's not what it's about. It's about transparency, okay? At the heart of it, that's one of the biggest problems that these transformations should seem to solve, right? If it's done right. Because if it's not done right, then the problem not only continues to exist, they become amplified. Like nobody's business. You've seen that, I know. So let's talk about how the product owner, Scrum Master, and team can help in breaking these silos down. First, as a side note, I have learned over the past several years that not everyone is on the same part of the journey. That applies spiritually, personally, professionally, emotionally, everything. We're just not on the same part of the journey. So we also have to recognize that in a large organization, not all teams, not all organizations, not all lines of business are on the same part of the journey either. Even each team member on a team is not on the same part of the journey. So when we say we're going to flip this switch, we're assuming that everybody just kind of falls in line, right, into the framework. It starts happening with this thing called PFM, pure freaking magic. And that's really a thing, right? So we're just going to adopt this framework, flip a switch. We're going to read it out of the book, certify people. Automatically, we're going to start delivering faster with more quality. And we're all going to roll into this together and, die trying, right? Y'all know that ain't the way it works. So when the organization decided to adopt this framework, was the intention to take some risk in that change. Talk about risk for a minute. And typically when you identify a risk, you should have a control in place to help you understand how to mitigate, manage, measure, right? Controls are there to place on these risks to avoid, reduce, share, or reduce the risk, right? So what risk were we willing to share, reduce, avoid, or accept when we made this choice to adopt this framework and institute it across the footprint? Well, there were some kinds of risks involved in adopting this, right? But the reward, or what they were expecting as an outcome, must have countered the risk they were willing to take. Because it's all about risk and reward, right? You see the benefit of it, it's worth the risk, or it's not worth the risk. Let's talk about how we maximize the reward first, and then maybe talk about minimizing the risk, but maybe it's all in one spiel here. So the first part, related to the product owner and the rest of the team, is very simple. But it's something that's kind of deep. So I want you to get your notebook out. Ready? I've already covered this in another episode. It's very simple, but get your notepad out. Write it down. You have to deliver. That's it. Don't worry about all that other stuff above you. Don't worry about program portfolio, large this, that, the other, framework, passing test, whatever, all that stuff. Deliver. Just deliver. That's all you got to do, product owner. You and your team deliver. If you commit to it, you get it done. No holds barred, right? No excuses, no worries. Get it done. Deliver it. That's it. That's how you minimize that risk. That's how you maximize the reward. You deliver. Deliver what you're committed to. That's how you handle it. It's all one thing. Nobody cares if you want to gripe about this or that, or pick out parts to debate in the adoption or the execution of the delivery. None of that really matters. You know there is uncertainty. Everyone else does too. That's why you do what you do. You know there is risk. You know there are obstacles. This is why you do what you do. Go solve it. Right? Okay, so that was easy. Now, let's talk about the leaders and the managers, how they can maximize the reward of taking this risk, or the value. We'll say reward and value kind of in the same terms here. It can only be achieved, and organizational leaders and managers, listen up, it can only be achieved by running the framework to its highest levels within the constraints and confines of inspect and adapt. You're always assimilating, right? So let me explain what I mean. And I'm going to give you an example. Yeah. So, and this example, by the way, was a question that was submitted by a listener. So I am happy to dive into the concept for a minute. We talk about business value, right? And so I'm going to try to help you understand about business value while integrating it as an example. So isn't that cool? So here we go. I have heard some organizations use planned business value. This is what we would expect the value to be if we met our commitment. By the way, this is not in a safe book that I know of. I've never seen it. If you find it in the safe book, please email me at scott@planetproductowner.org, because I don't think this exists. Then I have heard of actual business value, and that is what we commonly assign to the status, completed at the end of the time box, right? We want to complete this work at the end of the time box, and whatever it is that we did, then we assign our actual business value. Well, in my opinion, this is still not actual unless it's delivered to the customer. Customer has zero benefit on what you have on the shelf. Customer has zero benefit in what you have in a code-ready status, okay? So that's where some of the folks call actual business value when you get it into the hands, right? So, do what you want to here, make a house rule. I don't care as long as everybody's on the same page. So perhaps you can make an argument to redefine these terms. Make up those house rules like a monopoly to better define them, like assigning a planned actual code complete general release value, right? So you have an assigned business value for your planned, maybe for your actual. That would be like, once you're done or whatever, or your code complete status or your general release status, and you get a business value assigned to each one of those. And it's okay for an organization, organization to organization, I guess, as long as it's consistent, it's agreeable, it's measurable, it's repeatable, it's communicated, and everybody's on the same page, right? But everybody has to know what they're being measured by, okay? Now, these frameworks allow for those house rules. All that's good. But what is not okay is totally compromising the fundamentals of such framework. Just like I have coached product owners into assimilating into the SME role, leaders and managers should be assimilating into the promoter of their framework, not a detractor. Here's an example of what I mean. If you've read the SAFE handbook, you got certified during PI planning, business owner assigns a business value to the objective and the team, that the team has come up with for that PI. By the way, the business owner is also responsible for approving the plan for the PI. That's in the book. Okay? So I want to stop. Everybody read that. Everybody got trained on that. Everybody answered the question and passed the test. Okay? Y'all with me so far? So how many of you really get to PI planning, save a seat, or issue an invite to the business owner? Do you know the business owner? Who's the business owner? Chances are you don't. So here's what happens, and I'm sure you relate to this. A lot of people across the world can relate to this. I know if you're listening. A group of folks get together around your board or your chart, and they talk about all kinds of things like factors and values and risks and all that stuff, your commitment, obstacles and dependencies, and they like your plan, and they say, yeah, this looks good to me. So you kind of gotten a business owner by committee, right? And the question becomes, who is then accountable for that team's work? Well, you tell me. It's probably going to be the product owner, right? So really what we've done here is we have promoted an inconsistency in our adoption, an inconsistency within our framework. The folks who get the training understand this business owner concept on paper, but not in application. Imagine that. So now you see what I mean about working things in and out of the framework to your advantage. Going back to the previous segment. What is the message we send as leaders or managers when we do that kind of thing? It's confusing, right? So in the end, perhaps we're not delivering the thing of value because that was never really truly represented in our planning. So by doing this, we've compromised the fundamental idea that we should be delivering a complete, usable thing of value at the end of this increment, right? So that's a very small part of how improper promotion or detraction of the framework from a leadership perspective complicates it. It adds the risk that directly denies the reward. Just some things to think about. Hope this helped you out. We're going to get to the next segment and the last segment for today. Everybody hang tight. Last segment, yay. Everybody's like, oh my God, you are so long-winded today, dude. What's up with you? I guess it's cabin fever being locked up here with COVID with all 4 girls in the house and none of them have any money. And we seem to not have any food left in the house at all. So going fishing and going to play golf is directly in my future when I get done with this and hit submit. All right, so here we go. Finally, I had mentioned before that it seems that someone is looking forward to some organic growth. Now, organizational leaders, you are going to want to hear this. I'm telling you, you're going to want to hear this. Product owners, you too, of course. And I hope that you product owners and team members who are listening to this are actually taking some of this and using it to your advantage. You can use it in kind of your arsenal of ammunition that you have when you go in and challenge whatever's happening. Of course, I would say tactfully challenge, right? This organic growth thing, why is the word? Why do you think that they found that as an output to adopting this whole idea would be organic growth? Why would they get that? Well, it's easy. They heard things like cross-functional teams, self-organizing teams, all that jazz, and those buzzwords that we talked about earlier in this thing. So they had hoped that a byproduct of these things would promote this organic growth. It makes sense to me too, right? If I'm an organizational leader and I hear about these kinds of things, I'm thinking, wow, a reward here for us is to take advantage of these teams in close proximity with hearing each other's conversations and planning events and $10 million worth of agile space renovation and ping pong tables. That can help us grow organically. Sounds like I'm in. Sign the box. Sign it. Check the box. Sign it. Now, if that's what they thought would be a benefit or reward, then I applaud them, because when done right, this should be what you get. Okay? You have testers who become scrum masters. I know plenty of people that's happened to. You have team members who become product owners. You have a framework for folks from all areas of the organization to come in, and with a little bit of coaching, prompting, encouraging, and the right expectations are set, and you're promoting the framework, they too become active members of your movement. And here's how you can promote that. Product owner, Scrum Master, and again, team. I've talked about this before, but I want to like I emphasized about your job to deliver, making sure that you're focusing on built-in quality, that testing approach that we talked about, all those things. Here's the thing to focus on, okay? Cross-train. Every chance you get, you are an ambassador for what you're doing because you are at the center of it. You're the team, right? You're a martyr for the mindset, man. I mean, a champion of winning people to the light. What a feeling. I mean, you're the one we're all counting on to develop and mentor and bring them up in the right way by recognizing strengths and challenges in their development and challenging the very makeup of the organization by recruiting those who can help you get your ground game going. You know why? Because we're self-organized teams who are cross-functional. And this thing is not limited to just what we code or deliver. It's how we do it too. But here's the anti-pattern for the Scrum Master and the product owner. You ready, kids? Edge of your seat, I'm sure. Now, with all that shiny unicorn stuff out of my system, which is really not unicorn stuff, it's not just lip service. Let's talk about what kills it and something you can control. When you become the product owner who is not willing to coach others or be coached by others, it kills it. Just like that. When you become the Scrum Master who blames others, or the Scrum Master who doesn't run ahead of obstacles, can't take a hint from your product owner or from your team that there is an obstacle, and they're probably laying it on pretty thick without telling you what to do. They want you to understand they have a roadblock, but you don't pick that up. You don't encourage collaboration. You don't share the tricks of the trade. It kills it. When you become the team member who is struggling to overcome your challenges without raising your hand, it kills it. You got to get that stuff in line. You got to charge the tiger, man. You got to go back to basic training. This is a team. Team wins. Take a look at the Scrum. Take a look at a Scrum team. See how that works. Helping each other along, right? Now, for the leaders or the managers, it's really the same thing for you here. If you blame the framework for the problems or the shortcomings without using the framework's flexibility to solve the problem, you're killing it. I'm going to say that again. If you're the leader or the manager and you're in the middle of this framework, if you blame the framework for the problem or the shortcomings of what you can't get done without using the framework's flexibility to solve the problem, you're killing it. Now, nobody wants to become a part of that team. But if you solve it within the scope of flexibility that self-organization provides, now you're using the tools wisely. Now you're attracting talent. You're not choking it out. When you defend the principles that make it work, and believe me, not all of it works. I know, I've been doing this for a long time. Not all of it works. Some of it don't even make sense. Some of it you throw out the window, but not the basics. When you find out ways to solve your problems, your disconnects, or your shortcomings, and you start becoming innovative in your approaches and you allow for the self-organizing teams to not rely on centralized decision-making, you make it attractive for the best and the brightest talent to join your ranks. Does that kind of make sense? All right. Let's get off this crazy planet, shall we? I know that all frameworks don't solve for everything. I know that it's not all rainbows and butterflies, as do you. But it's a good guide. The problem is sometimes we don't like guides. We'd rather figure it out on our own. It's in our nature. One thing that I learned a long time ago, somebody else has been down this road. They've seen this before. I'd rather just look and see how they solved it before I go reinventing the wheel. All right. It's the same with adopting and defending these frameworks. Your organization invested a lot in adoption and training and certifications. And I think that many people just really want to assimilate to what's in the book. So what's holding you back from doing that? I hope this episode helped you today in the journey, and I look forward to your feedback, scott@plantproductowner.org. Until next time, have a safe, fun, and lean journey while respecting the social distancing practices of today.